At 5:41 in the morning, the bridge of the lead U.S. Navy vessel is already awake. There is no noise, no confusion, no wasted movement, just quiet focus. The kind of silence that only exists when every person on board understands where they are. The Strait of Hormuz is narrow, crowded, and watched from every side. Out here, the water may look calm, but one wrong move can change everything in seconds. Dawn has only just started to break. The sky is still pale, the horizon still blurred by morning haze, and the sea lanes are already packed with traffic. Tankers move slowly through the channel like floating walls of steel. Smaller commercial ships keep to their routes. Every vessel has limited space, limited time, and very little room for error. Then the calm breaks. Inside the operations center, a report cuts through the quiet. 3 fast surface contacts, bearing 031, closing. On the bridge, no one asks unnecessary questions. Everyone turns towards starboard. At first, there is almost nothing to see except haze, morning light, and the soft movement of the sea. Then the optics operator catches them. 3 small hulls, low in the water, moving fast. They have no visible fishing gear, no commercial markings, no automatic identification signal, just 3 sharp wakes building behind them as they come down from the Iranian side of the strait. The officer of the deck steps closer to the repeater screen. Range 8 nautical miles. Speed increasing. 28 knots and climbing. That changes the atmosphere immediately. These are not local boats drifting through a busy waterway. They are not keeping their distance or simply observing. They are moving directly toward the geometry of the American formation. Ahead, the lead U.S. vessel holds its transit course. Behind it, 2 other U.S. Navy ships keep disciplined spacing, locked into the same narrow corridor of safe passage through one of the most closely monitored waterways on Earth. There is no dramatic turn, no sudden panic, no sharp reaction, just steel, speed, and procedure. The captain speaks in a low, steady voice. Bridge to bridge, hail them. The radio watch sends the first call over international maritime frequencies. Unidentified fast craft. This is a United States Navy vessel conducting lawful transit. You are closing at an unsafe speed. Alter course immediately. Nothing comes back. The contacts keep coming. Inside the operations center, the radar picture tightens second by second. Bearings update. The projected closest point of approach keeps dropping. One of the 3 boats shifts slightly left. Not enough to break away, but enough to suggest coordination. Another holds a direct line toward the lead ship's starboard bow. The third trails wider, angling toward the gap between the first and second American ships. That is what gets everyone's attention. Not just the speed, not just the distance, the formation. Closest point of approach decreasing on all 3, operations reports. Possible intercept pattern. The captain gives a single nod. Condition 3, man key stations, log everything. Across the ship, the posture changes without noise. Sailors move faster, but not wildly. The forward mount turns a few degrees off the centerline, visible enough to be noticed, controlled enough to send a very clear message. Remote optics zoom in. The electronic team begins recording signals. On the weather decks, lookouts shift their focus from open water to the approaching wakes, now clear enough to see without binoculars. A second hail goes out. First in English, then again in prepared maritime Farsi phrasing, made for exactly this kind of moment. Still nothing. No response, no change in course, no reduction in speed. At 5:44, the closest Iranian craft moves inside 6 nautical miles. Through the long-range camera, its shape becomes clearer. Open deck, dark-clad crew, helmets. One mounted piece of equipment aft, another shape forward that is difficult to identify from distance. It could be gear. It could be something meant to look more serious than it is. And that uncertainty is part of the pressure. Everyone on the bridge understands that. Ambiguity is a tactic. Visual confirms personnel topside near mounted equipment, the optics operator reports. The captain keeps his eyes forward. Do not overreact. That is the challenge in Hormuz. Not simply spotting risk, but reading it correctly, quickly, and under pressure. The lead craft is now throwing a sharp white wake across the calm morning water, cutting toward the destroyer's projected path instead of running parallel. The second boat moves wider right, as if testing whether the American ship will give up space inside the lane. The third continues pressing toward the gap farther back, threatening the shape of the entire formation rather than only one hull. This is not random. This is pressure measured in knots, angles, and seconds. Contact 1 now, 32 knots, operations reports. From the bridge windows, the crew can see it for themselves now. The hull is small, but its intent is not. It is coming in fast enough that every second starts to matter. In a waterway this tight, with merchant ships nearby and U.S. vessels boxed into a disciplined transit line, a small fast craft does not need anything dramatic to create a serious problem. It only needs speed, poor judgment, and a few more seconds of bad choices. The captain gives the next order. Prepare helicopter launch. Aft, the message is already moving toward the flight deck. Tie down crews run. Aircrew begin moving. The helicopter is not airborne yet, but the ship has entered the next phase. Warnings have not worked. Presence is about to increase. At 5:46, the nearest Iranian boat crosses another invisible line. It is close enough now for bridge personnel to make out individual crew movement on deck. One man turns toward the mounted station. Another braces a hand against the rail as the boat slams through its own wake and continues accelerating. No one on the American bridge says much. They do not need to. Every screen says it, every wake says it, every second says it. The Strait of Hormuz has become a closing box of water and steel, and Iran is still driving inward. At 5:47 local time, the flight deck is no longer just a deck. It is a machine in motion. The MH-60R Seahawk comes alive under red safety lights and pale dawn. The rotor blades begin turning slowly at first, then faster, cutting the morning air into a hard rising rhythm that rolls across the stern of the trailing U.S. ship. Deck crew crouch low, signaling through rotor wash and damp Gulf air. Ahead of them, the three American vessels hold formation, still moving through the Strait of Hormuz, with almost no room to turn without turning the entire transit into chaos. On the bridge of the lead ship, the nearest Iranian craft is now close enough to read with the naked eye. Its bow slams over short chop, throwing spray in twin sheets as it keeps moving across the projected path of the formation. "Helicopter lifting," comes the call from aft. The captain answers without looking away from the water ahead. "Get me eyes over all three." The Seahawk clears the deck and slides low over the wake, nose down, accelerating quickly. It does not climb high. It stays low in the battle space just above the waterline, where the crew can see the geometry for what it truly is. And from above, the picture looks even worse. "Warship, Hawk 1 has visual on all contacts," the pilot reports. "They're coordinated." Inside the helicopter, the sensor operator moves the camera across the scene below. One Iranian boat is driving toward the lead ship's starboard bow. A second is running wider, matching outside the beam as if waiting for the American ship to alter course. The third is exactly where operations feared it would be, cutting toward the seam between the second and third U.S. ships. Not random, not civilian confusion, a three-angle intercept. Hawk 1 copies mounted equipment on at least two vessels, the sensor operator says. Multiple personnel topside, helmets, life vests, no visible fishing gear, no flags. The helicopter banks left and pushes forward, crossing near the lead American ship before angling toward the nearest Iranian craft. From below, the Seahawk is impossible to miss now. Gray fuselage, U.S. markings, sensors pointed down at the water, a warning without a single round released. The aircrew sends the first airborne hail. "Iranian fast craft, this is United States Navy helicopter. You are operating unsafely near coalition vessels conducting lawful transit. Alter course now." The message goes out in English, then again in maritime Farsi phrasing. No answer. The nearest Iranian boat actually increases speed. On the bridge, the officer of the deck watches the range numbers tick downward. 5,000 yards. The captain says nothing. He does not have to. The ship is already speaking for him. The forward mount remains trained just off-center. Close-in defensive systems are powered and tracking. The electronic team continues collecting every sweep, every transmission, every signal flicker coming from the boats and the shoreline beyond them. Then the wider picture starts tightening. "New emission from North Shore," operations reports. "Low-power surface search radar, bearing consistent with Iranian coast." Another voice follows almost immediately. "Additional surface contact farther north, larger than the fast craft, still outside immediate zone." That matters, because now the three small boats in front are no longer the whole problem. They are only the part moving fastest. Below, the strait continues to crowd in. Merchant traffic is building with sunrise. A tanker to port continues southbound, heavy and slow, limited in what it can do. A smaller commercial vessel farther ahead begins edging uncertainly inside the lane, likely seeing wakes, hearing radio calls, and realizing too late that military traffic is closing around it. This is how serious maritime incidents begin, not always with dramatic action, sometimes with compression, noise, misread distance, wrong timing. "Hawk 1, make a show pass," the captain orders. The Seahawk responds immediately. The pilot drops lower, skimming across the formation's forward quarter before swinging toward the lead Iranian craft. Rotor wash hammers the water into a flat gray sheet. The helicopter does not cross directly overhead. It does not provoke. It establishes control. From inside the cabin, the crew sees more detail now. One crewman on the Iranian boat looks up toward the helicopter and raises binoculars. Another stands behind the mounted station, not fully taking a position, but not stepping away either. That gray line is getting thinner by the second. The helicopter repeats the warning. "Alter course immediately. You are creating risk of collision." Still nothing. Then, at 5:51, the second Iranian craft makes the move that changes the atmosphere on every American ship in the formation. Instead of staying outside the beam, it cuts sharply inward, entering water already crowded by commercial traffic and the lead ship's safety envelope. Its bow throws up hard spray as it slices across the edge of a tanker's wake, bounces once, then corrects. On the bridge, a watchstander says what everyone is thinking. They're trying to force the lane, not to start something openly, not to make the first unmistakable move. They are trying to force hesitation, force a turn, force the American formation to blink on camera and radar. But the U.S. ships do not blink. They keep course, they keep spacing, they keep the lane. The Seahawk pulls into a tight orbit, and the sensor operator zooms farther in. Bridge, be advised, multiple individuals on lead craft moving near forward mount. Possible posture change. That lands hard. The captain reaches for the sound-powered phone and gives the next order in the same steady tone he has used all morning. Advise all ships. Force protection posture is elevated. No one engages unless I say, or intent becomes unmistakable. At 5:53, the nearest Iranian boat is now so close that individual faces are visible through magnified optics. The second boat is cutting across unstable water near the merchant track. The third is still pressing the gap farther back. 3 U.S. Navy ships, 3 Iranian fast craft, civilian vessels all around them, coastal radar active behind them. And above it all, 1 Navy helicopter circling low, watching the entire picture crowd together. The strait is getting smaller by the second. At 5:54 local time, the line between harassment and collision begins to fade. The lead Iranian fast craft is no longer pacing. It is no longer posturing from a safer angle. It is driving directly across the projected bow track of the lead U.S. ship, fast enough that every watchstander on the bridge can see the risk without looking at a screen. Contact 1 crossing left to right, operations reports. Closest point of approach collapsing. The numbers come quickly now. 2,000 yards, 1,700, still accelerating. On the bridge, nobody shouts. That is what makes the moment feel even heavier. The calm means the situation is real enough that nobody wants noise in the chain. Ahead, the Iranian boat slams over the chop and throws a wall of white water behind it. It is small compared to the American destroyer moving behind a steel bow and decades of procedure, but size is not the issue here. Geometry is, timing is. One fast craft in the wrong water at the wrong second can force a U.S. ship to choose between collision, loss of position, or escalation. The officer of the deck keeps his eyes on the contact. Helm, stand by. That order hangs in the air, not execute. Stand by. Because the first rule in a moment like this is simple. Do not be the one who breaks formation unless there is no other choice. Overhead, the Seahawk crew sees the same picture forming from above and says it first. Hawk 1 to lead vessel. Contact 1 is cutting hard across your bow. Unsafe. Repeat, unsafe. Possible deliberate bow cross. The helicopter banks tighter. Its rotor wash tears at the surface. Its cameras are locked on the Iranian boat now, zoomed close enough to show every man aboard. 1 at the helm, 1 crouched behind the center console. 1 aft near the mounted station, another near the bow, bracing with one hand and reaching with the other toward a rail-mounted shape that still cannot be clearly identified. The pilot keys the mic again. Iranian fast craft, alter course now. Alter course immediately. No reply. At 5:55, the American destroyer finally makes the smallest correction possible. Not a brake, not a dodge. Just enough rudder to preserve minimum safety while holding the transit lane and protecting the ships behind it. It is subtle, disciplined, almost invisible to anyone not reading the waterline or the heading repeater. But the fact that it happens at all tells the bridge everything. This is no longer routine shadowing. This is forced maneuvering. Contact 1 has entered safety envelope, operations reports. That changes the entire posture of the ship. On the forward decks, crews lock in harder on the approaching hull. The main mount remains trained off axis, controlled and deliberate, but now every sailor near a key station feels the shift. On the superstructure, sensors and optics continue pulling in detail. In the electronic space, a voice cuts through with something new. Possible tracking behavior from Contact 2. On the starboard side, the second Iranian craft has moved closer and is now appearing to track not the lead ship, but the helicopter. It is not a confirmed lock, not yet. But it is enough of a directed cue that no one ignores it. Hawk 1 copies possible sensor paint from second craft, the aircrew reports. No lock tone, behavior consistent with tracking. That is the moment the air above the water changes. Until now, the pressure has lived mostly in hulls, wakes, angles, and distance. Now it begins to feel like a systems problem. The captain gives the next order in the same controlled tone. Track only, defensive teams up, no engagement without unmistakable intent. All over the ship, systems come a little more alive. Not loud, not dramatic, just ready. Close-in defenses follow with tiny corrections. Defensive launchers remain steady, tied into the wider protective network. On the weather decks, security teams settle behind their stations with strict arcs and clear rules. No one wants to act too early in the Strait of Hormuz. No one wants to act too late either. Then the second Iranian boat makes its own mistake. Trying to press inward on the formation while avoiding the wake of a slow-moving commercial tanker, it cuts into disturbed water at the wrong angle. The bow rises hard, slams down harder, and the whole craft yaws sideways for a split second. From above, the Seahawk captures the moment clearly. Spray erupts. One crewman stumbles. The mounted station swings offline. The boat recovers, but not cleanly. That wobble matters. It proves what every American sailor out there already suspects. The Iranian crews are pushing right at the edge of control, and in crowded water, at speed, on a morning like this, the edge of control is exactly where a bad situation can become far worse. Hawk 1, they nearly lost control, the sensor operator says. Lead and second craft both operating aggressively. Formation is unstable. Behind the lead ship, the third U.S. vessel reports the back half of the problem. Contact 3 still pressing the gap between second and third ships. No crossing attempt yet. Holding pressure. Now the picture is complete. One Iranian craft has forced a near-bow cross on the lead ship. A second has shown possible tracking behavior toward the helicopter and nearly lost control in merchant traffic. A third is still trying to break the shape of the American line from the rear. This is the peak, the moment where every American system is watching, every watch team is recording, and every Iranian crewman is one bad decision away from turning a lawful transit into a regional incident before breakfast. The Seahawk pilot looks down and makes the call. Request low show of force pass. Approval comes instantly. The helicopter drops lower than before, angling across the forward line of the nearest Iranian craft. Not overhead, not reckless, but close enough that rotor wash flattens the water in front of its bow. Spray lashes across the small boat. The crew aboard it reacts. One ducks, another grabs for the rail, the mounted station swings again, then steadies. And for the first time all morning, the lead Iranian craft hesitates. Not much, just enough. Its wake shortens. Its bow angle loosens. Its speed bleeds off by a few knots. On the bridge of the lead U.S. ship, nobody celebrates. Nobody says anything they do not need to say, because farther north, through haze and early light, a larger contact is still moving. And the Americans still do not know whether Iran is finished pressing forward or simply changing the shape of the pressure. At 5:58 local time, the first real sign of hesitation comes from the Iranian side. It is small, almost invisible, unless you're watching through stabilized optics or reading wake length through salt haze and dawn glare. But on the bridge of the lead U.S. vessel, they see it immediately. Contact 1 speed decreasing. No one reacts outwardly. The captain does not smile. The officer of the deck does not relax. Inside the operations center, nobody says the words backing down. Because out here, in the Strait of Hormuz, nobody trusts a pause until it lasts long enough to become a pattern. Still, the change is real. The lead Iranian fast craft, the one that forced the bow cross and brought the formation closest to a collision, is no longer charging at the same angle. Its wake has shortened. Its bow is no longer cutting straight across the destroyer's projected path. Instead, it begins a shallow drift outward, the kind of movement that gives its crew deniability while giving the American ships what they need most. Space. Above the formation, the MH-60R Seahawk stays in its orbit, nose slightly down. Sensors locked. The pilot keeps the aircraft just far enough forward to dominate the visual picture without turning presence into provocation. Below, the sea lane is still crowded with merchant traffic. A tanker continues southbound off the American port side, heavy and slow. A smaller commercial vessel ahead has finally cleared the worst of the compression. The most intense minutes have passed, but only barely. Hawk 1 confirms contact 1 opening angle, 2 degrees, now 4, the pilot reports. Contact no longer holding direct intercept geometry. That is the phrase the bridge has been waiting for. Not retreat, not surrender, no longer holding direct intercept geometry. It means the American formation is starting to win back the lane. The second Iranian craft is slower to accept it. It remains farther out to starboard, still trying to appear aggressive, still pacing in a wide arc, as if it can preserve the image of control. But appearance is all it has left now. The moment it lost clean water and nearly skipped sideways in merchant wake, its leverage dropped. It can still harass, it can still crowd, but it can no longer force the American lead ship into another meaningful correction without risking a collision of its own. Contact 2, holding outside immediate safety envelope, operations reports. No confirmed lock, no further tightening. The third craft, the one that spent the encounter trying to split the seam between the second and third U.S. ships, finally begins to lose its own geometry. The reason is simple. The American ships never broke line. That matters more than speed, more than noise, more than intimidation. The U.S. formation did not fragment. It did not turn into three separate problems. It remained one controlled transit. And that is exactly why the Iranian intercept begins to fail. At 6:01, the second U.S. vessel reports the gap astern widening by several hundred yards. The third ship confirms the same. The Iranian boat trying to pressure the seam has run out of angles. It can continue pacing off the edge, but pacing is not intercepting. Pressuring is not controlling. One by one, the options in front of the Iranian crews disappear. The Seahawk makes another deliberate pass, this one wider and slower. Not because the situation is over, but because the Americans want every lens, every camera, and every crewman on those boats to understand the truth of the moment. They are being watched from above, tracked from 3 hulls below, recorded from multiple systems at once. If they push back in now, the record will be clean, precise, and complete. Inside the helicopter cabin, the sensor operator zooms in on the lead craft. The details are crisp now. Water sheets off the hull. A crewman near the mounted station is no longer braced in a ready posture. Another is looking aft instead of forward. The body language has changed. Even at distance, pressure looks different when it starts to fade. Bridge Hawk 1. Deck crew on Contact 1 are pulling away from the mounted station. That gets logged instantly. The captain on the lead ship says only 4 words. Maintain pressure. Hold course. And that is the American answer. No chase. No dramatic turn toward the Iranian boats. No attempt to punish movement that is already beginning to unravel. Just professional pressure. Forward motion, formation discipline. At 6:03, the first radio transmission from the Iranian side finally comes through. It is weak and clipped over open bridge-to-bridge frequencies. American vessel, you are near Iranian patrol area. Adjust heading to starboard. It comes too late to matter. The response from the lead U.S. ship is immediate, calm, and flat. Iranian fastcraft. This is United States Navy vessel conducting lawful transit in international waters. Your unsafe maneuvers are being recorded. Remain clear. No anger, no debate, no extra words, just the lane, just the record, just the ship continuing exactly where it was already going. The lead Iranian craft falls off another few knots, then another. Its bow turns a little farther away. The second craft mirrors the move minutes later, drifting outward to preserve pride more than position. The third, still well aft now, finally stops trying to press the gap and settles into a loose trail. What had looked like a coordinated 3-angle intercept less than 10 minutes earlier now looks like 3 separate boats trying not to be the last one still pushing. That is how these encounters end, when one side keeps control. Not with a dramatic retreat, with geometry collapsing in real time. On the bridge of the American lead ship, the tension does not disappear. It drains slowly the way seawater drains off steel after a wave breaks over the bow. Watchstanders still track every heading change. The captain still watches the larger northern contact that never fully commits. Operations still logs emissions from the shoreline. Nothing about Hormuz allows relief to arrive all at once. But the worst of it is gone now. The lane is open again. The formation is intact. And by 6:06 local time, the 3 U.S. Navy ships are no longer being intercepted. They are simply continuing transit exactly as planned, while the Iranian boats fall farther astern, still visible, still equipped, but no longer in control of the encounter. By 6:08 local time, the Strait of Hormuz looks almost normal again, almost. The 3 U.S. ships are still in formation, still moving at steady transit speed, still cutting a disciplined path through one of the tightest and most sensitive waterways on Earth. Ahead, the channel begins to open by degrees. Astern, the Iranian fastcraft remain on the screen, but the shape of the encounter has completely changed. They are no longer driving the geometry, they are no longer forcing decisions. They are no longer inside the American safety envelope. They are behind it. On the bridge of the lead ship, nobody mistakes that for a loud victory. There is no cheering, no relieved laughter, just a quiet return to the rhythm of a vessel that never actually stopped doing its job. Contact 1 now, 6,000 yards and opening. Contact 2 pacing wide starboard quarter. Contact 3 falling back astern of the second ship. Each update is logged. Time, range, bearing, course change. Every unsafe approach, every ignored hail, every near crossing, every moment the line tightened and then opened again. Because in a place like this, the first contest is not always decided by hardware. Sometimes it is decided by memory, documentation, and discipline. Above the formation, the MH-60R Seahawk makes one final orbit. Wider now, calmer, still precise. The pilot keeps the aircraft low enough to dominate the visual picture and high enough to preserve maneuvering room. Inside the cabin, the sensor operator sweeps one last pass across the 3 Iranian boats. Their wakes are shorter now. Their posture is different. No more aggressive crossing angles. No more attempt to split the seam between ships. One mounted station remains visible but unattended. Another crewman has taken his helmet off. Small details. But they matter. Pressure looks different when it is rising, and it looks very different when it has failed. Hawk 1 to all ships. Iranian contacts are no longer maneuvering for intercept. Recommend maintain transit. Continue track. That recommendation is almost unnecessary. The American formation has been doing exactly that the entire time. And that is the point. Iran tried to break the lane without openly crossing the final line. It tried to create hesitation. It tried to force one American ship to turn sharply, then another, until a lawful transit looked uncertain from the outside. But U.S. Navy ships are built around something more durable than steel and radar. Procedure, spacing, trust between bridges. The lead ship never sprinted out of the lane. The second never overcorrected. The third never drifted loose in the rear. Operations centers stayed linked. Bridges stayed calm. Defensive systems stayed ready, but controlled. The helicopter gave the formation eyes where hull-mounted sensors could not. Together, that discipline denied the Iranian boats the one thing they needed most: a break in the line. At 6:11, the lead Iranian craft finally turns far enough away that there is no ambiguity left. Not a tactical drift, not a shallow feint, a real separation. The second follows shortly after, widening its starboard arc and sliding toward a parallel course that says everything without admitting anything. The third trails off with the least dignity of all, still visible on the radar repeater, but now reduced to what it should have been from the start. A spectator with an engine. The captain on the lead U.S. ship watches the updated track picture for another long moment before speaking. Secure elevated posture in phases. Keep all contacts under observation. That is as close as anyone gets to celebration. Below decks, the process begins exactly the way it should. Not all at once, not carelessly. Key stations remain manned while the tactical picture is reviewed. Operations continues recording shoreline emissions. Electronic technicians label data captures. Radio logs are checked against timestamps. Optical footage from the bridge and the Seahawk is backed up. Each close approach is matched to exact range, heading, and rate of closure. If anyone asks later who pushed, who held, and who crossed what line, the answer will not depend on opinion. It will depend on footage. At 6:14, the Seahawk receives recovery instructions and turns back toward the stern of the trailing ship. The flight deck crew is already in position, jerseys bright against gray steel, hands ready, body language steady. The helicopter approaches over the wake, eases down through its own rotor wash, and settles onto the deck with the same control the formation showed all morning. Another system secured. Another phase complete. Out on the water, the three U.S. Navy ships continue northbound. Their bows rise and fall in the early light. Their wakes stretch long and clean behind them. The Iranian boats are still there, but smaller now. Dark specks against the brightening sea. Their intercept is over. Their pressure has failed. And the transit they tried to disrupt is still moving forward, exactly where it was always meant to go. No open clash happened. No hull was struck. No final line was crossed. And yet, the message could not be clearer. Iran came in fast, close, and deliberate. 3 American ships answered with spacing, sensors, steel, and discipline. They never lost the lane. They never lost formation. And they never handed control of the encounter away. By the time the sun is fully up over Hormuz, the morning is already becoming what the U.S. Navy turns moments like this into: a completed transit, a finished log, a lesson recorded in full.